Internal Revenue Service IRS tax news. Highlights from the 2020 National Tax Security Awareness Week. IRS Tax Tip 2020-166, December 7th, 2020. Recently, the IRS and its Security Summit, there's a link to the Security Summit here, partners hosted the 2020 National Tax Security Awareness Week. The goal of this week was to encourage taxpayers, businesses, and tax pros to take steps to protect their tax data and identities. Here are some of the highlights from the topics covered during the week. Protect personal and financial information online. Everyone should start with these basics. Use security software for computers and mobile phones. Keep it updated. And I think most tax professionals are getting better at using the security software on the computer. So you got to have the security software on the computer. I think one of the weaknesses may still be, because of different operating systems and whatnot, the other devices like tablets and phones and whatnots that are on the same network. Because they have operating systems that are different, it might be different in terms of the security software. So you got to be thinking about, those different operating networks for those different types of devices. I think really the unscrupulous people of the day often might be targeting, phones and other things that could be in the same network. But in any case, avoid phishing scams, especially related to COVID-19 or economic impact payments. So the phishing scams are probably the most common types of scams out there. So you get the email with some urgent message or something like that. And if you click on it, you go to a site that's going to be looking for information, looking like a legitimate site, but possibly not a legitimate site, where they might be looking to fish for information. Or you could end up downloading software onto your computer at the point you click a link. And both of these things might be then going through your firewall, because you're basically giving access to download something. So we got to be careful of these scams. And of course, this year is going to be a heightened level of scamming opportunity for people because of the COVID-19 and things like stimulus payments, such as the economic impact payment. So strong and unique passwords for all accounts. So you want to use the strong and unique passwords. Those could be difficult to put in place, but if you manage the passwords with something like some software like a LastPass or something like that, then it might be, it's a little easier to really use strong passwords and then still be able to manage them, although there's pros and cons of that kind of software as well. So use multi-factor authentication whenever possible. So that means you're going to be the type of thing where you got to log in and then they're going to send you a text message or something like that, or you can actually possibly use an app that could be more secure in some cases, but some form of multi-factor authentication. If you're a tax professional, then the tax software you have most likely then has been set up with the multi-factor authentication. You want to basically make sure to use that, or it would be good to use that, because it's less likely that someone can get access to the actual tax software and then file fraudulent returns, basically from tax software, or get information from it and whatnot. So shop only secure websites. So obviously when you go to the website, you want to make sure you're shopping somewhere that at least has the HTTPS, and the little padlock up top. So you don't want to be shopping anywhere or putting credit card information in places that don't have the padlock. And even further than that, you want to make sure that you're going to trusted websites. So if you get any links or anything like on an email, you want to make sure you're going to the trusted website. And if it goes somewhere like an IRS page, then you want to go to the IRS page directly. Oftentimes, go to irs.gov rather than going to basically a link, just to, again, be more secure that you're on actually a trusted website. Look for the HTTPS in the web address. So if you're using Google Chrome, this is the kind of thing that triggers whether you get the little padlock in the upper left corner, the S, as opposed to HTTP. So it used to be HTTP, now it's HTTPS, which means it's got that added level of security and whatnot. So you want to make sure that you're going to items that have that S on the end, and that should be going with a little padlock that's closed, a closed padlock. So avoid shopping on unsecured public Wi-Fi. So whenever you're going somewhere else, whether you be shopping or if you're a tax professional or something like that, you want to make sure that you're not accessing possibly, or you make sure that you're not accessing your data basically in the network from a public Wi-Fi possibly, because that could be an access point for other people and websites that you're going to use your credit card and that kind of thing. You want to be careful on the public Wi-Fi as well. And that, again, that goes back to really the phones and the tablets as well, because that's probably, and the laptops, of course, where you're going to be using the public Wi-Fi. And again, you want to make sure that you have the security on those other devices and the firewalls and whatnot, the security software on those devices, because that's often where the unscrupulous people target. So use multi-factor authentication. So all tax software providers are offering multi-factor authentication options to products for both taxpayers and tax professionals. So you should have the multi-factor authentication option on the tax software if you are a tax professional. So you could turn that on and use it. They basically are requesting that the software providers provide it to all the major tax software packages out there. So multi-factor authentication protects online accounts by requiring a second verification code in addition to the username and password. For example, the second feature may be a code sent to the taxpayer's cell phone. Multi-factor authentication provides a critical layer of protection for your online accounts. Get an Identity Protection PIN in January. The Identity Protection PIN program will available to taxpayers nationwide. The Identity Protection PIN or IPPIN is a 6-digit number known only to the taxpayer and the IRS. It helps prevent a taxpayer's social security number from being used to file fraudulent federal income tax returns. Taxpayers can review the Get an Identity Protection PIN details to see if the program is right for them. So to avoid identity theft on the tax return, so for example, if someone got your social security number, they could basically possibly file a tax return with your social security number because, of course, the IRS sees you as the social security number and then try to scam the IRS out of a refund before you end up filing. And then when you end up filing, it's going to say, hey, it'll kick back the return if you use electronic filing because the IRS is going to say someone already filed. You already filed with that social security number. So that means if you want to protect against that, then you could get a PIN. You can set up for a PIN that it looks like you would renew it each year. And so that way, then now there's two numbers that basically verify you. So if they have your social security number, then they still couldn't possibly file a tax return because they wouldn't have the PIN number. And so it gives you that added level of security. This is something that it looks like it started out with the IRS basically using this as a solution for people whose identity had been stolen. Meaning, if someone had stolen someone's identity, filed a fraudulent tax return based on it, and then you went through the process to fix it, then the IRS's solution for that not happening in the future, given the fact that now the social security number is out there with people who are willing to, exploit it and try to get a refund, obviously, because they did that in the past, then they give them this second identification number, a PIN number, so that now there's two identification numbers. Now, of course, at this point, you don't need to have gone through the pain of someone filing a tax return fraudulently and you having to deal with it. You could actually try to be proactive on it and look to see if you can get a PIN that you would renew each year to give you that added level of security. So business at risk for identity theft. Most cyber attacks target small businesses with fewer than 100 employees. The IRS has resources and information to help businesses stay safe. So it seems to be like that target, the area of target is like that 100 employees, and that might be for multiple reasons. When you're very small, you might be working out of a single office. You probably have less need for basically network connections outside of the office, possibly, although now, of course, you got COVID, and that's even more likely in smaller firms. But then when the firm gets a little bit like 100 employees, you start to have situations more likely where you're probably going to be growing outside. You're going to have more people accessing possibly the information from external ports, and that gives more access points for thieves and people that are trying to get information or whatnot to get into the network. And it might be the case that if you're growing and you haven't got the internal controls set up yet, right? The business is growing, you're focused on revenue, right? You're focused on revenue, and the business is growing past the point where your current internal controls are covering everything. So it seems to be a target point for people who are trying to steal information or run some scam to be targeting businesses that are in the growth stage, really possibly from a small business to growing to like 100 employees. So you want to just basically be aware of that as you're growing. Of course, you got to keep the internal controls updated, and if people are working outside of the office and they're accessing the network in the office, then you got to look more into the security for keeping the network safe and all that. So the IRS has resources and information to help businesses stay safe. All businesses can report identity theft to the IRS using Form 14039B, Business Identity Theft Affidavit. There's a link to that here. Check out the business section of Identity Theft Central on irs.gov. There's a link to that here. The professionals should review their safeguards. So tax professionals should review their safeguards. The IRS and the summit partners urge tax pros to review the tax security together checklist. So there's a checklist basically with the safeguards that you want to kind of go over to make sure that you're up to date on your protection there, because again, the taxpayers now, the tax professionals actually are being more targeted, of course, because they have possibly access to that valuable information that people might try to get access to. So you want to make sure that your computer is and your network is set up properly, so you can go through the checklist for that. So it covers a variety of topics, including deploying basic security measures, using multi-factor authentication to protect tax software accounts, how to create virtual private networks for working remotely. So if you have that working remotely, that thing about the VPNs possibly, that's when the VPNs become a lot more valuable. If you got people working outside and they're accessing the network in some way, then you want to make sure that you have an understanding of this VPN stuff and secure that tunnel it back in, right? Secure that link that's going to be outside to the business. And that, of course, is a big thing these days because of COVID-19 and more people working remotely. So create a written data security plan is required by law. The importance of knowing about phishing and phone scams, especially those related to fake clients, COVID-19 and economic impact payments. Creating data security and data theft recovery plans. So obviously there's no security plan that you can put together, that's foolproof. And so, if something does happen and you lose the data, then you need to have a plan for recovering, and that would be, backing up the data, possibly online, possibly with external drives, and so on. So the rest of this week's tax tips will take a closer look at some of these topics. So there's a link to the subscribe to IRS tips here. There'll be a link to this in the description.